Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Mormonism with the Murph, where Latter-day Saint explores the church's history and the church's truth claims. So I'm really excited for this brand new series we're going to be doing on the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is considered to be the keystone of our religion, as the prophet Joseph Smith said. It is a foundational part of the church's truth claims, and really the church rises or falls with the truthfulness and authenticity of the Book of Mormon. And many critics attack the Book of Mormon, its truth claims that it's a 19th century work filled with anachronisms and a lack of evidence for it. So this series is really going to be diving in. So in this episode, I'm going to be just touching on sort of what the Book of Mormon is, sort of like the faithful position, a brief summary of the critics' position, going through all the things we're going to cover in this series, and also sharing some statements from church leaders. So I'm just going to share my screen. And so this is all about the Book of Mormon. So what is the Book of Mormon? It's for maybe any listeners who aren't aware, maybe they might be investigating the church. But the Book of Mormon on its title page says it is an abridgment of the record of the people of Nephi and also of the Lamanites, written to the Lamanites, who are a remnant of the house of Israel. It is a record of God's dealings with the ancient inhabitants of the Americas and contains the fullness of the everlasting gospel. So it's about two civilizations, the Nephites and the Lamanites, who came from Jerusalem 600 BC, and they sort of broke off into two separate civilizations. And it's God speaking to ancient prophets and them writing these words on gold plates, and it claims to contain the fullness of the everlasting gospel. The record gives an account of two great civilizations. One came from Jerusalem in 600 BC, and afterwards separated into two nations known as the Nephites and the Lamanites. The other came much earlier when the Lord confounded the tongues at the Tower of Babel. This group is known as the Jaredites. After thousands of years, all were destroyed except the Lamanites, and they are the principal ancestors of the American Indians. However, in recent Book of Mormon introductions, that last phrase, they are the principal ancestors, has been changed to they are among the ancestors of the American Indians, because it was believed that Native Americans, they descend from Lamanites. But with DNA evidence and testing, it's around 99% of Native Americans that have been DNA tested descend from Siberia and Mongolia, not from Israel. But it's claimed that Joseph Smith received gold plates by the angel Moroni, that he was visited 3 times in one night, and during a period of 4 years, he obtained the gold plates. And by the gift and power of God and through using his seer stone, he was able to translate the ancient plates and dictate the text of the Book of Mormon within just under 90 days. And it's sort of like the believer's position that it is miraculous and it's the tangible evidence of the restoration, and Joseph Smith is a prophet. So we'll have a wee look at the critics' position. LDS critics maintain that the Book of Mormon is a work of fiction created in the 19th century. Critics do not accept that the Book of Mormon relates to an actual history of real people who came to the Americas and who were steel smelting, chariot driving, Christ worshipping, temple building, people multiplying into millions, yet left absolutely no trace of their existence. No archaeological, linguistic, genetic, or any other evidence of Hebrew culture in the Americas has ever been found to support the existence of such a people portrayed in the Book of Mormon. The book also contains numerous anachronisms, like horses, elephants, wheat, barley, steel, silk, and that scientists say didn't exist in the Americas during Book of Mormon times. So this is sort of a brief overview, from a 30,000 feet level of the critic's position. That's a 19th century work. That there's anachronisms in the Book of Mormon, both textual and also archaeological, and just a lack of evidence to support it as well. So we're going to have a look at maybe some quotes about the significance and the importance of the Book of Mormon in relation to the church's truth claims. Joseph Smith taught that's the keystone of our religion, and he declared, "Take away the Book of Mormon and the Revelations, and where is our religion? We have none." And it's so true. It is the keystone. If the Book of Mormon can be disproven and discredited, then so is Joseph Smith and the church. Pardon me, the church. The essential nature of the Book of Mormon. So this is many quotes from past prophets and apostles, and really there is no middle ground. Ezra Taft Benson said, "The Book of Mormon is the keystone of our testimony. Just as the arch crumbles if the keystone is removed, so does all the church stand or fall with the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon." President Jeffrey R. Holland said, everything in the church, everything rises or falls on the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, and by implication, the prophet Joseph Smith's account of how it came forth. It sounds like a sudden death proposition. To me, either the Book of Mormon is what the prophet Joseph said it is, or this church and its founder are false, fraudulent, a deception from the first instance onward. And another time in 1994, he said either the Book of Mormon is what the prophet Joseph said it is, or this church and its founder are false, fraudulent, a deception from the first instance onward. Not everything in life is so black and white, but it seems the authenticity of the Book of Mormon and its keystone rule in our belief is exactly that. And often I try to find middle ground and look for gray, but really I think ultimately when it comes to the Book of Mormon, it's either true or it's false. It's either was translated by the gift and power of God. It's historical. There were ancient gold plates delivered to Joseph by an angel, or he made it all up and it's all man-made and it's fictional and he was a fraud, whether a intentional con man or a pious fraud. It really is. There's no middle ground, and the church rises and falls with the Book of Mormon. Tad Callister sort of seconds this in his talk. I think it was called Book of Mormon, Man-Made or God-Inspired. It was a BYU devotional. And he says that the Book of Mormon is either man-made or God-given. Because the Book of Mormon is the keystone of our religion, as described by Joseph Smith, the church rises or falls on the truth of it. As a result, if the Book of Mormon can be proved to be man-made, then the church is man-made. On the other hand, if its origin is God-given, then Joseph Smith was a prophet, and if he was a prophet, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true. It is that simple. And I would have used the same sort of reasoning as a missionary. Would have told people if you pray and receive a witness about the Book of Mormon that it's true, then you can know by that same witness that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that this is the Lord's restored church. However, there are people who believe the Book of Mormon is true, but they maybe follow a different sort of Mormon denomination or break-off group, so they're not associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But because the keystone of our religion, the Book of Mormon and its witness of Jesus Christ, has also become the keystone of our testimony, which keystone holds our testimony securely in place. Thus, the Book of Mormon has become the focal point of attack by many of our critics. Disprove the Book of Mormon, and you disprove the church and undermine testimonies. And yeah, critics do attack the Book of Mormon. They attack, anachronisms and things that seem 19th century or plagiarized. And, if they can show that this is not a true historical record as Joseph Smith claimed, then, that really does disprove Joseph Smith as a prophet and the church. And it is the keystone of our religion and also of our testimonies. So it is sort of like a sudden death proposition. I'm going to share this from Elder Holland's talk. I think I need to get to 1141.
But there is, if anyone is foolish enough or misled enough to reject 531 pages of a heretofore unknown text, teeming with literary and Semitic complexity, without honestly attempting to account for the origin of those pages somehow, especially without accounting for their powerful witness of Jesus Christ and the profound spiritual impact that witness has had on what is now tens of millions of readers. If that's the case, then such persons, elect or otherwise, have been deceived. And if they leave this church, they must do so by crawling over or under or around the Book of Mormon to make their exit. In that sense, the book is what Christ himself was said to be: a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, a barrier in the path of one who wishes not to believe in this work. Witnesses, even...
And we're going to stop it there. So let me just get the presentation back up. So that clip from Elder Holland, talking about how really how the Book of Mormon has to be confronted. I had a similar conversation with Terrell Givens, and he talked about how the Book of Mormon is almost like a boulder in your path if you're like going down a stream or a river, and it needs to be confronted. It needs to be, in order to really leave the church and no longer believe it. it has to be, disproven, and, crawling under and around the Book of Mormon. And Brian Hales, in our recent interview, which will be released after this, he went through sort of all the skills Joseph Smith would have needed to compose the Book of Mormon. He talked about the complexity and the eternal consistency and the internal geography and all of the characters and all the plot lines and all of the sermons and doctrine and all the things he had to put together consistently, as well as like Hebraisms and chiasmus and such in the text, and Nahum and Bountiful. And he sort of presented the case for, did Joseph Smith have the skills to dictate and create the Book of Mormon himself as a 23-year-old from everything in his environment. And we looked at some of the theories for how the Book of Mormon came forth, and he gave his response, which I think is a really good opener episode to hear sort of a faithful position, sort of a case for the Book of Mormon, and sort of how the skills Joseph would have needed to produce it. But in my series, I'm going to be trying to cover a lot of the tough, controversial questions and the attacks on the Book of Mormon, and trying to look at the critics' position and their arguments and their evidence, and the apologetic or faithful position and their responses, and try to look at both the evidence on both sides and try to be fair and balanced, as I strive to be in all of my videos, and trying to set aside my biases. But we're going to be covering, the King James Bible, it being borrowed in the Book of Mormon. Why is it showing up in the Book of Mormon, the King James Bible, and particularly some of the italics and even errors? What's that doing in the Book of Mormon? How can we make sense of that? Going to do one on the Mound Builder myth and the view of the Hebrews, and this belief that that Native Americans, descended from Israel, and did that influence Joseph Smith's Book of Mormon? Did he plagiarize from other books? So we're going to look at some of the similarities, like either the Solomon Spalding manuscript or the Late War or the Book of Napoleon, that critics sometimes point to, that Joseph Smith was just taking from all these different sources. Anachronisms in the Book of Mormon, so things that are sort of out of time or place. Critics would tend to point to like physical things, like there's no horses or wheat or steel or barley or swords or elephants. And an anachronism sort of like disproves that it's true, and we'll be tackling that as well. We'll be looking at the old world geography, so like Lehi's travel through the Arabian desert, the Nahum and Bountiful, and any archaeological evidence that supports the Book of Mormon. We'll also be looking at New World geography and any archaeological evidence or lack thereof in the Americas. We'll be looking at New Testament passages, Jesus's sermon at the temple, and even a lot of the same phraseology or borrowing from the New Testament and Paul. What's that doing in the Book of Mormon? If the brass plates were taken 600 BC and there wouldn't have been any access to the old world with the prophets in the new world. Deutero Isaiah, the Sermon on the Mount, and the long ending of Mark, which are kind of new to me. I've only learned about those in the past sort of 6 months. So like biblical scholarship, and are those sort of textual anachronisms in the Book of Mormon? Does this disprove it? Protestant sermons, American antiquities, and the anti-Masonry rhetoric in the Book of Helaman and the Gadianton robbers, and Lehi's dream and the similarities to Joseph Smith Sr.'s dream, and are those things that Joseph Smith is just borrowing from his environment? We'll be having a look at DNA, Native Americans, and racism in the Book of Mormon, some of the prophecies in the Book of Mormon, and if these just came from Joseph Smith or from Nephi or Moroni or whoever is writing the prophecies. The tight versus loose translation, was it a tight translation that he was reading word for word from the seer stone, and he's reading the words literally, or is it a loose translation that he's putting it in his own words and expanding upon it? And it's a lot of Joseph Smith's vocabulary, which might explain some of the 19th century elements. But then we'll be looking at sort of like the strengths and weaknesses and sort of like the arguments for each of those positions. Changes or errors made to the text of the Book of Mormon, doctrine and the Book of Mormon. There's an argument made that the Book of Mormon contains a lack of sort of like Mormon doctrine, like temple ceremonies and eternal marriage and becoming gods, and even the plan of salvation, like 3 degrees of glory and the pre-existence, aren't really outlined in the Book of Mormon, which if it contains the fullness of the gospel, you might think, why are those things not in the Book of Mormon? And then we'll be looking at, could Joseph Smith have dictated the book? And there might be more episodes I'll add on. Comment if there's anything else you think I should tackle on the Book of Mormon. I think this is quite a long and thorough list, but maybe there's a few things that I might be missing as well that might be good to dive into. And I'm hoping to bring on sort of like scholars, experts, faithful scholars and even critics, and get their take and dive a little bit deeper, because I'm not an expert, but I will be trying to do the best research I can and try to be fair and objective as I go through it. And so in the next episode, we will be looking at the King James Bible, and we'll be looking at, why is there long passages of the King James Bible showing up in the Book of Mormon, and the version of the King James Bible that Joseph Smith owned, including errors and italics, and even, some changes that Joseph Smith made to the Joseph Smith translation, changing some verses, but why is this sort of like mistranslated verse showing up in the Book of Mormon? We'll be diving into that. So if if you're interested in this topic, if you want to go down this journey with me of looking at sort of like all the critical attacks on the Book of Mormon and seeing what the faithful responses might be, and really just wanting to hear from both critics and apologists, then please watch these videos. Please join with me. Please comment, and please share them with people who you think might be interested. I'm hoping these videos will be sort of a resource and something that can include, people on different spectrums. If you're a critic or you've left the church, or if you're sort of nuanced or more in the middle or kind of in a faith crisis, or if you're sort of, a believing member, but you're kind of open-minded and curious. And if there's any people who you think might benefit from this, then please share it with them. And please subscribe if you haven't, to help grow my channel and that more people can come across this content. And I'll see you all on the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.